Hello and welcome to our online information evening for parents of our new Year 12 students. We hope that you find the information that we provide for you useful and informative. What I hope we will do in this presentation is to answer some of the most frequently asked questions that we get, to explain some of the challenges that we find students face in sixth form, and maybe provide some suggestions for how you and we can support our young people during their time in sixth form. So just to introduce some of the members of the sixth form team, my name is Mrs Silvers. I'm the director of sixth form. Mrs Fairhill is our Deputy Director of Sixth Form. She's currently on maternity leave, but hopefully will return soon. Mr Gorbold is the Senior Coordinator of Sixth Form. He leads particularly on the academic support for our students and is also the school's online safety lead. Miss Cooper, or Maria as the students might like to call her, is the Deputy Coordinator of Sixth Form, and Maria leads on the pastoral support and wellbeing of our students. And Mr Ainsley is our Associate Coordinator of Sixth Form. He works with our Sixth Form Council and Student Voice and has also taken on some extra responsibility in light of Mrs Fairhill's maternity leave. So he will be leading on UCAS and alumni and also our EPQ qualification in the coming months. Also, we have tutors within the sixth form. You can see here that we have 10 tutors and each Year 12 student will be allocated to one of these tutor groups. They are mixed tutor groups, so Year 12 and Year 13 students are in together, and we find that this works well. We have a sort of informal buddying system in the tutor group called Amigos, where a Year 12 and a Year 13 will be buddied up and they'll work on some activities together, and there'll be someone that they can talk to if they've got any questions or queries. There are tutor sessions every morning, so students when they come into school should make their way to their tutor groups each morning for 8:45 for registration, and we have a range of activities that go on in tutor time. So we might have a whole sixth form assembly, or it might be that we call a briefing of just Year 12 or just the Year 13 to talk to them about relevant issues. We have a quiz that goes on every Friday with each tutor group. And then throughout the year, we have a range of activities and different topics that we look at. So we might do things like healthy eating or personal finance and budgeting. And then we'll do things like study skills and revision tips. And then there'll be charity events going on and so on. So the tutor time in the morning is a really important time for students to come into school, to just get important notices for the day and to get to know their tutor. This is particularly important when it gets to Year 13 and students are looking at their destinations, because it will usually be the tutor who writes references for their students. This is an image that we will sometimes use with students to talk about sixth form and what the path to sort of getting through sixth form might look like. And it sort of sums it up really quite well, in that people tend to think that you join sixth form in Year 12, you work your way through and you come out at the end of Year 13 with your qualifications. And actually, it's not always that smooth for people. There's lots of different challenges that might happen over the course of those 2 years that students have to navigate. And they might be issues to do with their academic studies. They might be personal issues to do with their friends. They might be issues to do with something outside of school that students are trying to deal with alongside their quite challenging academic studies. And this is why one of the key things that we talk to students about is communication and the importance of communication. If they don't feel able to come into the sixth form office, then they can pop an email to us, and that's an easy way to get in touch. Or we do have an answer machine on the phone. They can always phone through a message. We do have an open door policy within the sixth form, and students are always welcome just to come in and have a chat with one of us if they think that they might be struggling or if they've got any questions or any queries. Now we're just going to look at some of the basic things in sixth form which we often get questions and queries about. Some of you might know this already and it might seem quite obvious to you, but other people, some of this information might come as a bit of surprise. It's all information that will go to students as well, so it's just so you know the information that they're getting. The vast majority of students within our sixth form will be studying towards A-level courses. We will have some students following our level 2 pathway, and we will also have some students following BTEC courses or OCR courses. But the vast majority of our students are taking A-level courses. And here, now at Sir John Lehman, these are linear A-levels and exams take place at the end of the 2 years. Students will not sit AS exams at the end of year 12. And these new courses are particularly challenging in terms of the content and the level of demand that there is on students. And we find that it's the synoptic knowledge that is vital for students, that drawing the information all together. And so students, right from the start of the course, they need to be looking at what they can do independently to help their own learning. And Mr. Gorbold will talk about that a little bit more in his academic presentation. It's important that students are looking at things such as the resources that there are in the study room, where it says what students can do for subjects outside of their homework. Students should never find themselves in a position where they're saying, I haven't got anything to do, because there's always something to be doing. And one of the most simple things is to go back over lesson work and to create some revision resources so that you're constantly revisiting the content of what you've been learning. It is about those higher order skills as well of analysing, interpreting and evaluating, and not just remembering. However, students can't do those things if they don't learn the content in the first place. So just learning things, just looking at the content is not going to get you a strong, successful grade at A-level. It is about developing those higher order skills. And as I've said earlier, a lot of this does rely on students working independently, and that's why we work with students in terms of trying to develop their study skills to help them with that challenge of level 3 study. The swap or drop deadline is something that we will publish very clearly to students. It will be at some point towards the end of September. And this is the deadline by which students can swap or drop a subject. The reason why we have this is because students are following 2-year courses, so they need to make sure that they are on the correct courses for them. Therefore, this swap or drop deadline allows them to attend a few weeks' worth of lessons before making any decisions. In addition, we can't let students swap and change subjects too late, otherwise they will have missed too much content of the academic year. So it's really important that students think carefully about the subjects that they're doing. If they want to swap a subject or drop a subject, the first port of call is to come into the office and talk to Mr. Gorbold about that, and then we will liaise with the relevant staff and we'll support that student in terms of making what we hope will be the best decision for them and for their progress in sixth form. So as I say, this swap or drop deadline will be sometime around the end of September of 2020. As well as completing their academic studies, all of our Year 12 students will complete some form of enrichment that should go onto their timetable. The sorts of things that they can choose from are listed here. So some students will be doing an extra qualification in terms of the extended project qualification. A very popular option is for students to do learning support, which is where they go into a classroom and they help a teacher out. Lots of students like to do some recreational PE. They might want to do the business option of Young Enterprise, or they contribute to the sixth form newsletter. Some of these options are automatically timetabled for students, so items such as EPQ and recreational PE will be allocated. Things such as learning support, then we would ask students to go and liaise with teachers to decide who they want to work with and when they want to do that. And it's up to the students to make sure that they turn up for those sessions. And the reason that we ask students to do this enrichment is just to get involved in the wider life of sixth form and just to add some extra skills and some extra experience that they can put down on any future applications to apprenticeships, careers or university. The move to linear A-levels, and therefore the fact that we do not sit AS levels at the end of year 12, has meant that we are able to offer all level 3 year 12 students some work experience in July. Unfortunately, that won't be happening this year because of the current situation, but we are hopeful that it will happen for next academic year. Students self-source a placement, so it's worth them starting to think about the sorts of area that they might like to go to, and students might need to be a little bit creative when thinking about potential placements. What sorts of skills do they want to develop for their ideal career, and where might they be able to develop them? We will provide further information to both yourselves and students on this in the autumn term. We do send out a newsletter to parents via email, so there's lots of information that goes out on that. But like I said, it's worth students starting to think now, where would they like to go for this week of work experience in July, and coming up with some ideas and finding out some contact details just at this early stage. So something that students can do before they start in sixth form is to get prepared with just some of the basic stationery that we think students could do with having. You can see them listed here. Lots of subjects will use folders, which students might not be used to in year 11. So they'll need some folders, some A4 paper and so on. Also, things like plastic wallets and file dividers are very helpful for students to have whilst they're in sixth form. You'll also see we've put on here a USB. While students can save their work on the computer's system, it's really important that they back that up. So they could save it to the OneDrive, which is our cloud system, but also having a USB that they can use to save work on as well is very helpful. Something that's different in sixth form, which you might not have experienced in year 11, is that students can get access to a locker. We put information out about that in September. We ask for a £5 deposit just for the key and so on, and there are limited numbers, but students can share lockers, which lots of our year 12s and 13s do. They'll share that with a friend. You will find that perhaps some subjects might ask for specialist subject equipment, such as the specific calculators in maths and so on, but staff will tell students about that. In addition, those students who have applied for the bursary funding, they will find that at the start of the year, they'll be provided with a stationery pack, which helps to provide lots of these basics that we ask students to have. In terms of attendance at sixth form, the timings of the day are exactly the same as they are for the rest of the school. So the day starts at 8:45, which is when registration begins, and students should arrive in good time for that. If students know that they're going to be absent, or they wake up in the morning and they don't feel very well, we do ask for a phone call to the sixth form absence line. You can see the number there. There is an answer machine and a message can be left on there. It's just so that we know that students are safe and they're at home. If there's a student that arrives on site late, for example, they missed the bus, or they just woke up late, there are some late sheets outside the sixth form office on the signing in and out board. students need to sign in there under their relevant tutor group, and that's just so that we know the students are on site before we make phone calls home. It's worth saying on here that the Go for Schools data on attendance for sixth form, it doesn't represent them very clearly. Things such as study leave and so on might be classed as an absence, and that's not entirely correct. So please don't pay too much attention and don't worry too much about the attendance data on Go for Schools. One of the things that we do know is that attendance at sixth form is really key to students achieving well and settling in. And you can see here that once attendance starts to fall, that can have an impact on results. We do monitor students' attendance, so we have a fortnightly attendance meeting where we just look at students and look at those that might have had a number of unauthorised absences. In other words, they've been away and we don't know why. And then we'll perhaps contact those students to just ask them to pop into the office to have a chat about that. It might just be that they forgot to phone in, or lots of times it's that students don't sign in for their study periods, which is something that we do ask students to do. Lots of students and parents ask us about this, about our dress code. We don't have a dress code in sixth form, but it does need to be appropriate dress for a work environment, and also bearing in mind that there's lots of other students on the school site that are particularly younger, so it's being a role model for those students. The key for our dress code is ID badges. So in terms of safeguarding, and so that younger students and staff know that our sixth form students are young adults who should be on site, they need to wear their ID badges visibly. And this is something that we do struggle with, so any support on that would be much appreciated. Students will be provided with an ID badge with their photo on and with a lanyard. They need to make sure that they've got those with them every day and that they are wearing them visibly. So they need to be on the lanyard around their neck, and it also needs to be outside any jumpers and so on. Something that's a little bit different in sixth form, which students might not be used to in year 11, is that if they don't have a lesson or a study period, they can leave the site, and they don't need to ask about that. But what they do need to do is they need to make sure that they sign out and they sign back in. And this doesn't matter how long they leave the site for, even if they just pop out for 10 minutes at break time. They need to make sure that they do this. And this is just for safeguarding and health and safety purposes. So, for example, if there was a fire alarm and we needed to all congregate on the field, we would know which students were there and which students had signed out. It's also really important that students pop into the office if they sign out because they're going to go home, they don't feel very well. We just always want to make sure that students have a safe way of getting home, and normally we'll ask them to just give us a quick call when they get back to let us know that they're home safe. So it might be useful to you to have an idea of what a typical student's timetable looks like. Here's one example. So we can see each morning this student has registration and they've got their lessons on their timetable. And you can also see highlighted in yellow some private study sessions. And these are the sessions that we ask students to put on their timetables to say when they're going to actually do some independent study. We ask that students put about 2/3 of their non-contact time down as private study. And during these sessions, students need to pop to the office just at the very start of the session to sign in and just let us know where they're going to be working. It's up to the students to decide what work they're going to do in that time and where they are going to work. So we have a variety of areas around the school where students might want to do that work. You can also see on here that this student has chosen learning support as their enrichment activity, and they've obviously been and spoken to a member of staff, and they do that every Friday, week 1, period 1. Here's another example of a timetable. Again, the student has got their registration in the morning, their lessons and their private studies. They don't have any learning support or anything like that on their timetable. What they have got as their enrichment is their extended project qualification. And so they are going to be completing that over the course of the year. What we ask students to think about when they allocate their private study is to think about any study leave that they might request later on in the year. And I'll talk about study leave a little bit later on. But you can see here that this student on a week 2 Friday had no lessons. And so they also decided not to put any of their private study sessions on there. And that's left that whole day free, which means that they might later on be able to take that whole day as study leave. So just to talk a little bit about study and director study and independent study, as I said, we do ask students to allocate 2/3 of their non-contact time as study periods. That really is the minimum that they should be completing in school. Lots of our students will do more than that, and they do need to come to the office at the start and just tick the sheet. And at the start of year 12, we will do some monitoring of attendance. If students have said they're in the library working, we'll pop along there and just check that, just to support those students with that move to a more independent way of working. Some students might find that they have a session on their timetable that's referred to as a 6FS. That is a directed study session. What that means is we do run some classes where we have quite a small number of students, maybe only 2 or 3. Whilst these students will have 6 sessions on their timetable, not all of those 6 sessions will necessarily be with a member of staff. If there's only 2 or 3 students in a class, they don't need to have all of that time directly with a teacher. What will happen in those 6FS lessons is that a teacher will set that student's specific work to be doing. So again, once the students have got that work, they need to just pop to the office at the start of their 6FS session and sign in so that we can register them for that. We often get asked by parents and students about the amount of study that students should be doing when they're in the sixth form. So you can see here that we're saying that for every hour of lesson time, students should spend about the same time on doing independent study. And this is in addition to completing any homework. For a student that's doing 3 subjects, that means that every week they should be doing approximately 7 hours above and beyond what is on their timetable. What I will say is we do sometimes have some students that struggle to not do too much work, and they get really focused on that. And we really work with these students in terms of getting that work-life balance and making sure that they're taking some time for themselves and not just working all of the time, because that really can impact their mental health. In terms of study leave, this will have been mentioned to students when they came to their guidance meeting. But for year 12, we expect them in school every day in the autumn term. We don't ask students to apply for study leave until the start of the spring term. And this is so that students can get into the more independent way of study within sixth form whilst we are there to support them with that. It helps them settle in, it helps them to get to know each other, it helps them to get to know members of staff. What this doesn't mean is that they're stuck on site all day, every day. If they do have a non-contact period where they've got no lesson or they've got no study period, they can leave site and head into town for an hour or so. They just need to sign in and sign out. So back to the timetables then. If we do have a student in year 12 that gets to January and they decide that they want study leave and it's this timetable that we're looking at. What will happen is the student will collect a form from the sixth form office. They'll highlight on there the sessions that they would like to take as study leave. They would ask somebody at home to sign that form, and then they'll bring it into the office to get it checked. So this person here might ask for week 1 Tuesday period 3 every fortnight and every Friday week 2 as study leave, and it's likely that that would be agreed with that student. Looking at this timetable then, the students got a range of options when they might ask for study leave. I suspect that they would probably ask to leave period 3 on the Tuesday and Thursday of week 2, and would probably ask not to come in on the Friday morning of week 2. Something to bear in mind when we look at study leave is the number of times that students ask to come in later in the morning. It is important that students are attending a good number of registration sessions, so it's unlikely that we would authorise more than one period 1 of study leave per week, and that means that students would get to see their tutors quite regularly. We tend to have our assemblies on a Monday, and we tend to have any briefings that we might want to have sort of on a Wednesday or Thursday. And so if students know that they've missed a briefing or an assembly because of study leave, it's really important that they just have a chat with somebody that was there to find out if they missed any important notices. Mock exams for Year 12 are really important because we have no formal AX exams at the end of Year 12. And so we'll give students lots of information about this in advance. We'll hold a couple of assemblies to talk to them about the process of mock exams, and they'll get given a timetable so they know where they need to be and when. During the time of mock exams, we do suspend the Year 12 timetable. So that means that on those days, students only have to be in school for their exams. If they want to come in, they're more than welcome. So lots of students want to come in and work with their friends on site in terms of completing some revision, and that's absolutely fine. And as you can see here, we do have a resit process as well for students. Any students that we do ask to resit their exams, again, there will be support put in place for those. It is really important that students take these mock exams seriously. I think this year has shown us how important these mock exams were, but particularly for those students that are looking to then progress on to university, staff are likely to look at that grade that students achieved in their mock exams to form part of their prediction for UCAS. That's not going to be definitely the grade students will get predicted for UCAS. There's lots of other factors that staff will take into account, but that will be part of the process. In terms of getting involved in sixth form, this is really one of the keys at Lehman Sixth Form. It is a real community, and students that get involved in the wider aspects of sixth form life are those that tend to settle in faster and enjoy their time at Lehman a bit more. So, as I said earlier on, all student will do an enrichment activity, but there's lots of other opportunities to get involved. Some of them are listed here. The Sixth Form Council events and Rag Week, although they're sort of led by the Student Council, there's a huge amount of opportunities for other students to get involved in those, and we really encourage that. It is sad that we have a number of Year 12s who, when they get to Year 13, they say we wish we'd got involved earlier on. And it can be daunting to do that if students aren't feeling overly confident. But if they get together with some of their friends and work in groups, then that makes it a little bit easier. We're also more than happy for students to come forward and suggest ideas to us for things that they can do in terms of the sixth form community. And where possible, we will support those with students. So there are lots of things that they can get involved in terms of the wider school and sixth form community. And we really encourage students to do that. Whilst they're in sixth form, as I said earlier, there's lots of things that students can be doing outside of their lessons and their homework. So students coming to us and saying, I don't have anything to do, is one of the issues we often have at the start of year 12. And our answer will always be, you never have nothing to do. There's always something to be doing. So there's lots of information up in the study room to support students with that. But if they then want to go a bit more above and beyond and look at something that we call super curricular activities, these are the sorts of things that they can do. So whilst there is a formal period of work experience in July, it might be that students arrange another period of work experience for themselves, particularly those that are looking to go perhaps into the medical field or veterinary field who need a wide range of work experience. We're happy to support that with students and work with them to make sure that they don't fall behind with their academic studies. Some students will already know about MOOCs. These are massive open online courses. They're generally free to complete. They are degree level short courses in a huge range of subjects, and these are really useful for students that want to go above and beyond in their subject area, particularly those that are looking to go to university. In addition, there are always really interesting podcasts, lectures, TED Talks that students can look at and access online for free, again, to help them go above and beyond in their subject. As I said, in particular for those students that are looking to go to university, these are the sorts of things that universities will be really interested in. Students being able to talk about what they've done above and beyond their lessons to show their interest in the subject. We just thought it was important to talk to you about our C6 system because sometimes students will go home and say, I've been given a C6, and parents don't really know what that means. For those students that came to Lehman up to year 11, they'll be familiar with the C1, C2, C3 system. And we do have a C6 system, but this is slightly different in sixth form in that really the C is a concern. It's not a consequence like it is in main school. So the C6 system just allows staff to note on our information system any concerns they might have about students, and they cover these 4 areas. So if they've got someone who they think is starting to miss their lesson every Friday, they might put a C6 concern on for attendance. If it's somebody who they just think hasn't been themselves recently and has been a little bit withdrawn, they might put that on as a pastoral concern. And what happens is the C6 system is reviewed regularly by members of staff, and this helps us to identify where there might be areas that students need some support. So if a student comes home and says to you, I've been given a C6, this is generally, it's just a concern that's been put on the system, and we'll have a look at those and we'll work to support students appropriately. As I mentioned earlier, communication is really important in sixth form, and there's some slightly different methods of communication that we use. First of all, we have a whiteboard in the sixth form area. Any really important sort of urgent daily notices will go on there. So it's important that students check those on a daily basis. In addition, we have a set of trays in the sixth form that are alphabetical by surname. Any information that we have to go to students in physical paper form, or staff might use those to give out work to students, they will go in those trays. So students need to be checking these regularly as well. Email is a big method of communication in sixth form, and it's vital that students are checking these on a daily basis. So we do talk to students at the start of the year about trying to set this up on their phone so that they can access it regularly. We also have social media, so it might be worth following us on social media. We have Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, although we don't tend to use Twitter as much these days. In addition, we also send home a parents' newsletter every so often, and we would need your email address for that. So if you think we haven't got your email address, if you let us know that, we can add it onto the system. In terms of communicating with you, alongside the phone calls and emails that we might send to you for various reasons, and the parents' newsletter that I talked about, we will have a parents' evening. We also have reports that go home, and we also have Go for Schools, which is an online system where that you can access as well as students, as long as we've got your email, and you can look at things on there such as their timetable, so you know what lessons they've got and when they should be in sixth form. You can also access their reports on there once we've written reports. This is the area where I said to you earlier on that it will show some attendance information, but that's not necessarily going to be 100% accurate because of the nature of sixth form attendance and study leave and so on. And finally, although Year 12 have yet to start with us, quite soon after they've started in September, we will talk to them about life after Lehman and starting to think about what it is that they might want to go on and do. In particular, we will ask students to have a physical folder where they put any research that they might have about their career opportunities. And really, this is just about them early on identifying a variety of options that they could pursue so that they know what it is that they're aiming for and they know what grades that they need at the end of their 2 years of sixth form. And this often gives students something to work towards and motivates them a little bit more. So I hope that this PowerPoint has helped you with some of the basic questions that we get asked. And I hope that the other PowerPoints give you some information about the support that is available to our students. If you do have any questions or queries further to the information we've provided, then please don't hesitate to contact us via our email address, which is sixthform@sirjohnlehman.co.uk.